AI is not entirely new. It's been in the background for a decade, and it moved into the foreground in November 2022. Human-computer interaction is somewhat forever changed, and so as professionals, trying to lead and innovate, if you're not engaged now, you are at best a fast follower,
Mhm.
potentially even almost a Luddite.
So, Brent, thank you so much for joining me to talk about the 2026 AI and ABM trends. I wanted to start with perhaps the topic that's on everyone's minds at the moment, the proliferation of AI. It's become easier and cheaper to produce content with AI, more so than any point in history. But when every organization has access to kind of like the same tools, the same processes, the output starts to converge. My question to you is, has democratized content production been good for the industry, or has it created a problem that we didn't have before with regards to differentiation?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think the answer to your question is in your question. Uh, Everyone's gained production capacity, so it's easier to make outputs, but artificial intelligence is really collective intelligence, and so the results do converge unless you work really hard to have something that feels distinct.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the opportunity for people, is to maintain a point of view, a style,
Mm-hmm.
a brand, something that is your unique perspective that people want to do business with, or a product that solves a problem in a specific way or has specific attributes. Perhaps
Mm-hmm.
it's sustainable or fast or privacy oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think the situation hasn't changed. It's been amplified for
Right.
everyone.
Yeah. So what we've kind of seen from the survey analysis is that confidence is a really important variable in terms of how people use AI, how organizations rather use AI, and what's actually separating the teams that are using AI to stand out is that confidence versus the ones who are just trying to keep pace. I guess my question is how hard it is to replicate that capability.
Mm. Uh, I think it requires a thoughtful implementation to begin with. The
Mm,
the data is relatively easy to capture with subscriptions and effort.
yeah.
But intent data is about declaring keywords that you think signal intent,
Hmm.
um, and making the right selections there so that they lead to the downstream outcomes.
Hmm.
That requires some experimentation and also a willingness to ignore things that maybe have potential but don't seem uh, as likely to produce the desired outcome.
Hmm.
Confidence is cultural and technical.
Mm,
You've got to cover both pieces there, and some of that is giving people a dashboard to look at. Um, but the dashboard does not guarantee conviction and follow through on the stated strategy that the dashboard is meant to measure.
yeah. Yeah.
That's so that alignment and confidence in a plan, uh, yeah, is part cultural and technical.
Yeah, no, I love that the part cultural and part technical because I think at least from what I've seen and perhaps this is like widespread throughout the industry that there's a lot of organizations jumping on AI as this silver bullet to their problems as opposed to building the right infrastructures, building that confidence, having that rigor. And there's like a version of AI adoption that looks like progress from the outside, more content, more campaigns, more activity, but it's not really moving that commercial needle. I guess my question here is how do you recognize that you've kind of fallen into that trap? What does it take to actually build a program or rather rebuild a program rather than optimize what's not necessarily working?
Whew. I think it takes a judgment call to admit that the system design is wrong.
Mm,
If you're not in an experimental, growth-oriented culture, there could be, um, uh, a resistance
ah,
to pursuing a different thing. I think our conversations with sales and marketing, like they should evolve and change over time
mhm,
because you're working together and then facing new challenges. if the conversation is not progressing and evolving, then there's probably something like fundamentally flawed that you're not getting past whatever problem it is that you're currently facing.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I don't know if I got to your question, but I think it's, it, admitting that it's time to reset is the first step to an effective reset.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. And I think it's so interesting that you say it, because when we were looking at the data, I think like one of the biggest bottlenecks was actually a human process, like agreeing between sales marketing alignment rather than a technological one, the acknowledgement that there's something fundamentally wrong, as you say, and just coming together and saying, look, we gotta rethink this. Like it's I'm pretty sure it's the top barrier or the second most cited barrier in the report. So it's actually fascinating that even with all this tech, it's still almost a human issue that's kind of at the core of what's going right and what's going wrong. So I wanted to just switch quickly to another kind of theme. Sorry, if you don't mind.
Okay.
A bit about agentic AI ABM. Every kind of like major technology shift in B2B marketing has created this sort of divide between organizations that jump on early and those that wait. I'd love to know where we are in that cycle with agentic AI, and is that window fast closing, or is it still very open?
Wow. Well, I think AI is not entirely new. It's been in the background for a decade, and it moved into the foreground in November 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I do think human-computer interaction is somewhat forever changed, and so as professionals, trying to lead and innovate, if you're not engaged now, you are at best a fast follower, potentially even almost a Luddite, in certain industries, right? And the cost of waiting is delayed learning, which is going to be people who are learning are accelerating their learning potential. But as a broader society, and what AI in the foreground means, like we're in the very early innings of that. Largely still focused on training data sets as opposed to inference workloads and applying that. We think that the compute is going to federate and be more distributed to endpoints and not always have to go to a data center. That's certainly a part of what Qualcomm's thesis is on technology and AI. I think organizations are experimenting today, and those experiments are not perfect, but we're acquiring institutional knowledge, the same knowledge that I talked about at a personal professional level. And that gap's not going to close easily, because organizational inertia and entropy are like naturally working against you. And so, yes, you have to get started and have clarity of thought in what you're trying to accomplish in doing so. Because without a vector, you have speed but no velocity.
Yeah.
You've got to have a direction that you're going.
Yeah. It's so interesting again, because when we looked at the data and like the kind of like early adopters of AI, at least in an ABM capacity, the explorers, the ones that also have that program confidence, they're kind of reporting the best kind of results, the most satisfaction. But it's such a small minority of organizations at the moment. The vast majority are, as you say, like exploring, trying to work out that vector, the trajectory with the velocity to make sure they're making the right kinds of decisions. So I think it's a fascinating time to be using AI in B2B tech for sure. Kind of brings me on to my next question, really, which is probably a bit more AI ABM sort of centric. There are a few organizations that are kind of using AI agents to make autonomous decisions about which accounts to prioritize, like who to go after, what content to serve, when to route a signal to sales, for example. That's a very obviously like very meaningful shift in how the process operates. My question is, how should a CMO or a team think about when they're comfortable delegating to a system, and at what point should a human stay in the loop?
Yeah. Well, generally, I think humans should be in the loop. They might be invoking tasks, or reviewing the outputs. We're all fetishizing this notion of an end-to-end workload, but you get end to end, step by step by step.
Hmm.
And each of those steps is an opportunity for a human. I think it's okay to delegate maybe some selection and certainly sequencing of tasks to
Hmm.
AI.
Hmm.
But judgment about those tasks and accountability for those tasks, I think, needs to remain human.
Hmm.
We're comfortable letting systems summarize and draft, like maybe like route things as automation, or it could be AI
Hmm.
comparing two things and opining on them. But a human still needs to matter what happens, or like what happens next, or what matters strategically.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's echoed across like a lot of the conversations that I've had with experts like yourself. That the human involvement in the process is absolutely critical to like ensuring the validity, the consistency, the quality of the outputs. Um, and I think that the best organizations are obviously going to be a meld of those two things. And I quite like what you said, like the step-by-step sort of process, as opposed to just dreaming of this end-to-end workflow that's just going to be packaged for you and it's like, here you go, it's gonna work, sort of thing. Um, Sort of like ties into what I wanted to ask you next is about data as a foundation.
Mm.
Um, rather interestingly and somewhat ironically, data is the foundation of good outputs, good workflows, good infrastructure. But it's like consistently one of the lowest prioritized items we found in the study. Um, has the industry's relationship with its own data sort of fundamentally changed, or are we kind of still making the same mistakes a bit faster with AI?
Um, yeah. So like certainly AI didn't create our data problems,
Hmm.
but it, like we talked about earlier, it sort of amplifies everything, and
Yep.
it's sort of removed our ability to hide from data problems. And data problems come in many shapes and sizes.
Mm.
An area where I'm particularly passionate is naming conventions, taxonomies, ontologies, like understanding the lexicon of our business and
Mm.
translating that into systems. That's a passion area of mine that is exhibited in the work that we do in the ABM and AI programs here at Qualcomm.
Hmm.
Uh, I think to answer your question, like bad data used to fail quietly because it was not in demand by as many people. Right, the
Mm.
CIO knows about it, and maybe the CIO and the CRO are debating or whatever. But now like bad data fails confidently at scale. Right? people ask people ask Copilot a question, and the data leads an LLM, a platform, to a certain conclusion.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, those questions used to be, I don't know, finding answers to your questions used to be less accessible. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
now, yeah, those problems, are just more visible for folks. So it's changed our relationship in that way.
Mm.
I don't know that it's so much about like faster as it is much more obvious.
Mm. The accessibility, as you mentioned, is like a core part of it. The ability to be able to ask more questions of the data has certainly exposed the issues with a lot of infrastructures. Um, as I sort of mentioned, data infrastructure is like one of the single biggest activation bottlenecks in AI plus the ABM. Um, what I wanted to ask as a leader, how do you kind of make the case for investing in a foundation rebuilding rather than just adding more tools on top? I'd love to hear your take.
Mm. I think it matters what we call a foundation. Um, for me, that is um, shared understanding, shared definition,
Mhm.
mutual understanding of the goals, the systems, and the people it takes to achieve those goals. You know, Processes need to work well before you automate them,
Mm.
uh, and so tools don't work without that fundamental shared understanding. Um, and then there are lots of human judgment about the decisions we make in order to get there, right? Qualifies a lead, what disqualifies a lead, what moves an opportunity from this stage to that stage. Those are usually business rules that we as humans are defining. And
Hmm.
then our systems are a reflection of that. And so if your system design is wrong, or people don't believe in it, that's not a tool problem. That's
Mm-hmm.
a foundation problem. And
Mm-hmm.
then, yeah, you need to configure that inside of your tools. And usually adding more tools is an additional stressor
Yeah. Yeah.
unless you have the foundation of your house in order.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really like what you mentioned with it being a reflection of how you look at things, how you think. I think that's quite poignant, quite powerful. Um, I'd love to learn a bit more about how you're leading by influence with your ABM program, how you're managing to operate at scale, but with a small but mighty team, as you mentioned. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, okay. So I joined Qualcomm in 2022,
Hmm.
and that was after a successful ABM pilot the summer before. So I got hired to stand up that program, and it was focused on one business unit. And we've certainly served that PC-oriented business unit. Snapdragon X Elite processors now have something like 10% market share within the price points that we serve in North America. And my team translated those requirements into predictive models and Salesforce opportunities. And through exposure to other business units, I realized how diverse our business was. And so today, 4 years later, our program has just three full-time employees on the global marketing team.
Hmm.
But we've tried to spread the good word about ABM by influencing and educating our peers, and then also by providing like enabling solutions.
Mm.
We have translated um, our various business units and our account objects. We have OEMs that make automobiles. That's one segment. OEMs that make mobile phones. There's not a lot of crossover. That's a different segment. And neither one of those is the entire automotive or electronics industry. So we have a lot of segments that we've managed in order to operationalize
Mm.
account-based strategy inside of our paid media team and our sales operations team. So yeah, providing a strong fundamental foundation, a point of view, and tactical, practical solutions that people can nerd knob their way into in a LinkedIn campaign or a Salesforce report
Mm-hmm.
um, has allowed us to have a really successful program with a tiny but mighty team.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's fascinating because with a team of three, as you mentioned, like managing that whole kind of like ABM process and making it permeate throughout the organization. Obviously, you could probably have like quite a sophisticated or quite a very functional kind of tooling stack. I'd love to hear more about how you're using the tools to enable the rest of the organization, but also to build that ABM structure as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So I sit inside of the um, digital ecosystems team,
Hmm.
like MarTech and digital ecosystems. And so we have huge investments in partnerships with Adobe. We also have Sixth Sense, Salesforce, Marketo, and quite a broad tooling stack. And we have a MarTech operations team
Hmm.
that supports that. Many of them are part of what we call the Alliance of Badass Marketers. That's ABM. So that alliance of like 20 something folks, a lot of them are MarTech oriented,
Hmm.
and we've read the research, believe in the methodology, and have instrumented our tools such that the people who request work from us or that we collaborate with to execute a campaign, we're all singing from the same
Mm.
songbook. Um, we're doing personalization with Adobe Target, and the Abdul Joma runs that solution. We do personalization inside of Marketo campaigns. If you know, are a developer, you're getting one kind of content. If you're a business executive or a business decision maker, you're getting a different kind of content from us.
Hmm.
Um, and those are not sophisticated strategies, but they are stated and executed well.
Hmm.
And that is its own form of sophistication, to know which of our million contacts, and I don't know that it's a million, but which of our contacts to send
Yeah.
X to versus Y to.
Mhm.
Um, we have huge, I think I'll stop there.
Yeah, yeah, no, because
You edit that up, but yeah, I think I got to an answer for your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
I think the execution component is such a huge part that I feel like a lot of organizations are still kind of missing. So you know, when they see like best practice advice from an organization like Qualcomm Technologies, for example, you know, it kind of gives them a better reassurance, a better idea of how to go about things. Is kind of what I was trying to get at, because
Yeah.
in the report we found that activation is still one of the things that organizations kind of struggle with. You know, they've got the signals, you know, they know what to look at from the data, but they're really struggling with acting on that in the right kinds of way, working out who to go after. The last thing I kind of wanted to ask you, Brent, if you don't mind, is if you had to give one bit of advice to someone watching this who's embarking on their AI plus ABM program, what would it be?
So my advice to anybody embarking on a new adventure
Hmm.
is to take a moment and think first about what it is that you want to accomplish, and then go slow to make sure you're moving in the right direction,
Hmm.
and then go really, really fast.
Hmm.
So, you know, you want to allow yourself the time to iterate while you're close to home base to whatever provisions you have before you embark out on whatever adventure. And if you are going to go fast in any direction, you want to make sure it's the right one.
All right one. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. That's a great way to end. Brent, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate the insights. Very excited to have you as one of our featured experts in this year's report.
Yeah. Appreciate it, Aaron. Great to meet you, and looking forward to reading the report.